Engaging with Trump supporters at his rallies offers a fascinating window into a fervent segment of American political culture. These supporters often celebrate Trump's tenure as a golden era of American prosperity, emphasizing what they perceive as his successes in securing the borders and bolstering the economy. They laud his direct approach and candid rhetoric, seeing him as a bastion against what they consider the obfuscation common in political speech. Trump's appeal to his base lies not only in his policies, but also in his unorthodox communication style, which resonates deeply with his followers. They view him as a candid outlier who dares to voice unpopular truths, in stark contrast to what they see as a generally insincere and ineffective political establishment. Critics, however, paint a different picture, accusing Trump of fostering division with misleading claims and unfounded assertions. They point to exaggerated descriptions of event turnouts and achievements as examples of a disconnect with reality. These criticisms underline the stark polarization in American society, where different factions not only hold divergent views, but also fundamentally disagree on the nature of facts and leadership. Observing the dynamics at Trump rallies and the unwavering loyalty of his supporters provides key insights into the intense partisanship that defines current American political discourse. It underscores the challenge of engaging in meaningful dialogue to bridge the deep ideological divides that segment our society. This scenario serves as a crucial reminder of the ongoing struggle to reconcile differing political realities in a divided nation. The world was at peace, and America was stronger and more respected than ever before. Here, Trump's revisionist past is fully on show. It is ridiculous to believe America was more respected and the world was at peace. During his presidency, trade conflicts, rising hostilities with allies, and a declining America's global reputation emerged. Regarding the border and inflation, these are complicated problems with no straightforward catchphrase that would help to define them. His simplification overlooks the complexity of these difficulties and the part his own government plays in generating them. Now on Earth, crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country, the world is in flames, our border is overrun, inflation is raging, Europe is in chaos, the Middle East is exploding, Iran is emboldened, China is on the march. Trump's apocalyptic language is meant to inspire dread and unite his supporters. But from economic recovery to rebuilding international alliances, this doomsday story ignores the progress Biden has made. Although there are difficulties in the world, Trump's hyperbolic statements only help to deflect his own shortcomings and the advancement achieved during his turbulent presidency. The radical left Democrats rigged the presidential election in 2020, and we're not going to allow them to rig the presidential election in 2020. With assertions of the radical left attempting to silence and cancel Trump's movement, his victimhood narrative peaks. Being constantly attacked is meant to inspire his supporters against a shared enemy, but this divisive rhetoric overlooks the actual harm his own policies and behavior cause. It's another attempt to keep control over his followers by means of lies and avoidance from the truth. The convicted felon. Trump may make these bold claims about his events. However, Trump's disaster campaign speeches and empty rallies paint a different picture, a picture that Jordan Klepper masterfully dissects with his trademark wit and insight. Let's dive into how Klepper dismantles Trump's narrative and exposes the crumbling foundation of the MAGA movement. Would it be safer with Donald Trump returning to the presidency? 100%. I know without a fact it would. Without a fact, it would be a safer world. Yes. Klepper's sarcasm here is palpable. Given his erratic and careless presidency, it is absurd to believe Trump would bring about a safer world. From cozying up to dictators to raising tensions with friends, Trump's foreign policy was anything from safe. Klepper deftly exposes the stupidity of Trump supporters' unquestioning faith in a leader who regularly threatened world stability by mocking their unfounded confidence? Well, I think we were. We noticed on the campaign trail that a lot of people in the MAGA world were speaking highly of Vladimir Putin, were echoing some Russian talking points, and so this was sort of a chance for us to delve into that, see how the Republican Party has gone from a party that used to stand up to Russia to one that embraced one, and it took us all the way even to Estonia to try to talk to some people who had a little bit of a clearer idea as to what autocracy looked like. Klepper exposes a disturbing trend within the MAGA movement, the embrace of autocratic ideals. Once adamantly anti-Russia, the Republican Party has changed under Trump's direction to show a startling respect for autocrats like Putin. Klepper's investigation of this change reminds us sharply of how Trump's words have undermined conventional American values of democracy and freedom. The fact that Trump supporters can now publicly support a dictator says volumes about the perilous path Trump has guided his supporters toward. Look closer. You can see a lot of cameras out there, and that's the mainstream media. Don't trust anybody who's talking to a camera. Klepper's encounter at a Trump rally where he humorously echoes the distrust Trump has sown towards the media is both funny and frightening. Constant attacks on the media as fake news by Trump have seriously eroded public confidence in journalism, a pillar of democracy. Klepper's satirical approach underlines the irony and risk involved in a leader pushing his people to mistrust the very establishments meant to hold power accountable. You have really been the guy at all these different Trump rallies, talking to Trump supporters. What have you learned from Trump supporters? Oh, that's a big ask. What have I learned? You don't necessarily go to Trump events to learn things. I've learned that Americans are more creative than we give them credit for. I learned that Americans need meaning in their lives. They need community. That's something that I definitely relate to when I go to these events, is the sense of community that appears at one of these events. People feel like they can be a part of something. You put on a hat, you see other people wearing hats. They might have a similar point of view as yours. You feel like you're amongst friends. I think that's very real. What gets scary is what I've noticed over the last 6 months to year and a half is these events are getting darker and darker. People are feeling a little bit wounded, a little bit behind the gun. I think since the Trump conviction as well, like people are angry. And so what started as like rah-rah, we're a part of this exciting political conversation. When Trump lost the elections, things took a turn for it being darker, and they stopped the steal. And now, I think it's heading in a scary direction. Klepper's notes on the development of Trump rallies from energetic political events to dark enraged mobs are instructive. Originally about shared political excitement, the sense of community at these events has evolved into something more sinister following election. Trump's unfounded assertions of a stolen election drive the obvious resentment and anger. This change emphasizes how dangerously Trump's rhetoric is driving his supporters toward a more extreme and maybe violent posture. Klepper's insights remind us that this isn't just political theater. It's a real and growing threat to the fabric of American democracy. So I will say, still going to these events now, they are a circus for anyone who attends. They seem smaller and they seem more bitter. That doesn't mean that can't be playful to some, and some don't see the anger and the vitriol that Trump exudes. But there's a darker undertone that's there. Klepper catches the shifting mood of Trump events exactly. Smaller, more enraged groups have taken the place of the once huge, energetic crowds. This resentment captures the disappointment of Trump's base, fed a constant stream of lies and conspiracy theories. Klepper's darker undertone serves as a sobering reminder of how Trump's influence still seeds division and hate, even as his support base contracts. These events' circus-like character now hides a more alarming reality, a movement driven more by resentment and a rejection to embrace democratic results. I think what I found is, in order to win, if debating one another is all about who can win, who can lose, which I think is a terrible way of looking at it, But if you really want somebody to come over to your side, you have to show vulnerability. You have to concede. You have to lose. With my Republican family members, with my friends, the only time we can actually have a real conversation, and not just talking points and posture, is when one of us can show a little bit of uncertainty. Like, you know what? I don't know all of those economic reasons for why we're where we are right now. You know what? I feel like I'm emotional about the things that are happening at the border. But I also don't know if I trust the Democrats' plan for stopping the issues at the border. If you can show that little space with uncertainty, often not in front of a camera or in front of parents who are judging you, but one-on-one in some sort of setting, I think those are the moments where things soften, and that's what I found in my life, how we can actually get to, I don't want to say middle road, but get to a place where you actually are hearing somebody for the first time. Is it hard to do it without being condescending? Now, you're asking the wrong guy. Let me tell you how to do it. It totally is. And I think, the culture we're in right now, the media culture we're in right now, is not creating spaces for people to be vulnerable, to be uncertain. Nobody's retweeting uncertainty. Particularly in the polarized political environment produced by Trump, Klepper's observation on the need of vulnerability in conversations is absolutely important. His refusal to change, own mistakes, or show any kind of vulnerability has created a poisonous benchmark for his adherents. The political debate has gotten so hostile because of this refusal to participate in sincere communication and compromise points. Klepper's call for vulnerability and honest conversation is a refreshing antidote to Trump's combative and divisive tactics. Real progress results from listening, understanding, and occasionally owning our mistakes, qualities Trump sorely lacks. On that note, we have our own U.S. newscaster special of exposing Trump for you to watch. Make sure to like and subscribe if you love democracy. Hope you enjoy. I was in Washington, D.C., and I'll never forget when the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi, a Speaker of the House, brought in nearly 30,000 National Guardsmen and turned our Capitol complex into a military base. And you weren't allowed in there. The American people weren't allowed in there. And then they proceeded to shut down the country over COVID. They masked school children. They shut down schools. They closed. All he does is lie about everything. Here, play this clip. But we achieved the lowest African-American unemployment rate and the lowest African-American poverty rate ever recorded, ever recorded during my 4 years. Carl Quintanilla, a very well-respected journalist on CNBC, posted, this is what Jason Miller had to say, his advisor. President Trump takes on numerous tough interviews every single week and delivers lengthy rally speeches while standing, demonstrating elite stamina. First of all, I didn't know if stamina could be elite. But secondly, Susan, it's almost like what he says is beside the point. The fact that he's up there standing, still talking, is enough, the Trump team thinks, to placate anyone or dissuade them from thinking that he's somehow addled. The shutdowns, the lockdowns in this country occurred in red and blue states under Donald Trump, not President Biden. The country actually opened up under the Biden administration because of President Biden's very successful, wildly successful vaccine rollout. This chart, I'm going to data facts, things that matter. Industrial production, and it shows the manufacturing durable goods, and specifically motor vehicles. And you can see under Trump where it was, and you can see under President Biden where it is, significantly higher under President Biden. Part of the problem is the fire hose of lies and BS problem, which is to say that if we already feel Trump has overwhelmed us with bizarre digressions for years. Here were some of the responses, though, to Donald Trump speaking at this church where there were mostly white people in the audience. Robin of Detroit writes, I don't see many black Detroiters at this black church and black Detroit. The pastor claims he wants to hear about Trump's plan for black Americans. You know the one. The one Trump only shared with black rappers, athletes, and black felons. Not with any black people in corporate USA. The only thing they care about is putting President Trump in jail. And here's the one thing that has me infuriated. This pathetic trash. Alvin Bragg from New York. Yeah. Trash. Creates his fake charges, his fake felony charges. It is a bunch of bullshit. Then unpacking what's new and different becomes so hard that people just throw up their hands, you know? But remember, person, woman, man, camera, TV in 2020. Donald Trump has always graded himself on a curve in the same way that Jason Miller there is grading Trump on a curve saying, "Oh no, it's okay as long as he can stand up." And it's rhetoric from Marjorie Taylor Greene and another Republican supporter. And it's the type of thing that we have heard on the trail recently, which is almost messianic rhetoric concerning Donald Trump. Listen to this. Oh, President Trump is a convicted felon. Well, you want to know something? The man that I worship is also a convicted felon. I mean, Donald Trump is a convicted felon. You can call them fake all you want, but they're legally binding. He's going to be sentenced in July. He may get jail. I don't know. I doubt it. Right? Given how privileged and powerful Trump is. But yeah, it's legally binding until a higher court overturns it, which again may be possible, but it's not done yet, Marge. So sorry to hurt your feelings, Snowflake. But Donald Trump is indeed a convicted felon. First fall 2020 icons. Twite debate between the two of them. That was, I think, a striking moment for many Americans. It probably did help Joe Biden put away the first campaign and defeat Donald Trump. Trump seemed out of control. It was truly, I think, the worst debate I've ever seen between any presidential candidates, and largely the tone was set by Trump, who was not just incoherent, but virulent and, you know, just careening around. Remember, Biden's best line in that first debate in 2020 was "Enough already, man," and he was murdered on a Roman cross. We're here in Sunset Park to worship and bring back the greatest president we've ever known in our generation. So what do you think when you hear rhetoric like that? I don't even know what to think, John. I mean, look, I'm not going to speak for the American people, but I think that rhetoric speaks for itself. Well, we do know at least that Trump isn't intending on doing any debate practice heading into one of the most important moments of his political career. So we have that unrehearsed Trump in the Raw to look forward to on June 27th. Donald Trump and his MAGA allies are focused on seeking revenge and retribution. They are running a negative campaign that is not focused on the American people, but is focused on themselves. We are making sure that the American people understand that President Joe Biden is fighting for them. This is an extremely concerning situation. I don't think anyone in the United States government, Americans, do not support actual Nazis or white supremacists. I certainly do not. You asked multiple questions. He saw me in there and he was like, "Hello, Marjorie." He's always so sweet and recognizes me. And he said, "Are you being nice?" He was joking. "Are you being nice to Speaker Johnson?" And I said, "Eh?" And he said, "Okay, be nice to him." And I nodded my head. He wants to continue his policies of lowering costs for families, lowering prescription drug costs, continuing his agenda of economic freedom. Whereas our Republicans are focusing on themselves, and Donald Trump has made it very clear that if he steps back into that White House, he will rule as a dictator on day one. I did not ask him a question. You certainly did. You said, "Did you see this?" Gentlemen, ladies, time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost from Florida. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get into it, it's interesting to hear my colleague just now talk about disavowing white supremacists. We'll return to the stuff about Speaker Mike Johnson, but that is Congresswoman Marjorie Greene fangirling out because Donald Trump recognized her. Like they met once. You're a congresswoman. You've been on the campaign trail with him. In Nevada, Marjorie Taylor Greene, in a way, compared Donald Trump to Jesus. There was another Republican figure who did. And there's this song that's making the rounds on TikTok, big with the kids, that does the same thing, which compares Donald Trump pretty overtly to Jesus. I want to play a little bit of that. When in 2022, she spoke at an event led by white supremacists and white nationalist Nick Fuentes, and when asked about it, doubled down on it and said, "We're going to focus on people, not labels." So get out of here with that damn hypocrisy. It would be weird if he didn't recognize you or deeply troubling about the state of his brain, but he did. And he recognized the trouble that she's presented to the GOP because, of course, as was said by Congresswoman Greene there, he asked her if she was being nice to Mike Johnson. That apparently drew a round of laughter from the Republicans. There was apparently an eruption of laughter, according to tweets. Again, we've been asking this morning, Doug, what people's impressions are of this. What is one to make of that, Doug? My colleague from Georgia, she talked about misinformation, and I don't know what she was talking about, but nevertheless, we can look at her own tweets, and we can find plenty of misinformation. Nothing's worse than a reporter that only reports half the story. She left off all the nice compliments President Trump said about me to our conference. President Trump is right. I'm loyal and unapologetically support him everywhere and all the time, and I am capable. Well, clearly it's crazy time, John. There's no doubt about it. But I think Donald Trump benefits from us talking about the crazy time and not then focusing on those other issues that Trump either loses on or can gain from. When we talk about all the weird things that Donald Trump does and we fact-check the 37 lies that he told in a speech, what we're not doing is talking about the issues that everyday Americans care about. They don't focus on this weirdness. And it is weird. But the biggest problem that we have is we have people that sit in this chamber and they spread the misinformation. Been a tough week for the representative from Georgia, hasn't it? First, it was quite possibly the most striking example of how reprehensible she is viewed these days, with the fact that Fox News turned on her and declared her, and I quote, an idiot. That's why I'll be nice to Johnson as long as he's nice to my favorite president. Was this written by a second grader? Am I being unfair? Is it mean to point out that she is speaking like a child about their favorite puppy? I think on fundamental values. I think this issue of having a guy who now we know is, committed sexual assault, who has defrauded the government of hundreds of millions of dollars, who's now 34 times a felon. I think these things are really going to matter. I mean, we know this from Republicans like Mitt Romney, who talk about this all the time. Now, she said that we need to work with Israel to track down the serial numbers on any U.S. weapons used by Hamas against Israel. Dr. Snyder, I may be going out on a limb, but are you aware that that was actually just propaganda that was put out, and there actually were not U.S. weapons that were being used by Hamas, as she attempted to insinuate in this tweet? She goes on to say, President Trump is committed to winning the White House, the Senate, and the House. This is one of the best speeches I've ever heard. Okay. And apparently he got a standing ovation after standing ovation. He was talking to the Republicans in the House, all of whom owe the entirety of their career to his continued support of them. He just can't support a Republican who's been found, to have committed sexual assault. So I do think in addition to all the issues that Doug is talking about, which really matter, the issues of values, leadership, integrity are also going to really matter in this election. Yes. I mean, obviously there what you have is a typical example of American-Russian messaging where the implicit idea is supposed to be, we shouldn't give weapons to Ukraine because they are going to end up going somewhere else. There's no evidence for that. It's hard to think of an example where American weapons have been leveraged with such success as on the Ukrainian battlefield. The fact that they stood and cheered for him is about as meaningful as shows of support for a North Korean dictator from bureaucrats there. Yeah, they don't want to be murdered. That doesn't mean they actually love the guy. Former President Donald Trump is set to attend a pre-sentencing interview after a jury found him guilty on all 34 felony counts in his hush money trial. But yesterday in Las Vegas, his most ardent supporters described the conviction as a sign of his martyrdom, with the head of the Nevada Republican Party going as far as to say that Trump supporters should worship the presumptive GOP nominee and Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, comparing Trump to Jesus. But this is what happens when you replace a party with a cult. It descends to these embarrassing levels. Kenk, what do you think? Yeah. So I was curious about the video because I read that she was fawning in her praise of Trump. But clearly Trump put her down. Yeah, he noted her presence and then basically told her, cut the crap out and stop attacking Mike Johnson. That's the thrust of his message to Marjorie Greene. So I was wondering if she was faking it or if she really is like a pathetic little fangirl. Everybody was so worried yesterday about you, and they never mentioned me. I'm up here sweating like a dog. They don't think about me. I'm working my ass off. I don't care about you. I just want your vote. I don't care. It would be suicide before Biden, right? Thank you so much. In fact, for some people, especially people that serve on the committee, they may be surprised to know that it is actually a former Russian president and Putin's sidekick, Dmitry. And I don't want to slaughter his name. Some say Dmitry M., who actually, she quote tweeted. Just quickly, it's the scene. It's the scene in Mean Girls. It's like the day was November 5th and he turned around and he was like, you know what?